Good morning and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Diane's been working with buyers and sellers in the Missoula market for over 25 years and shares her insights on the local housing market. Along with her trusted partners, Diane provides complete service for your real estate transaction and brings us guests who provide useful information on industry-related topics and trends. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk, KGVO. Hey, good morning. We welcome you to another edition of Missoula Real Estate Today. Always nice to have you tuned in to KGVO over the weekend. And Diane Beck from Windermere Real Estate has provided us another wonderful guest. We are with Deb Fassnacht, Executive Director and co-founder of Watershed Education Network. So we'll learn a lot about that today. Welcome. I guess I say welcome back to the show, huh?
Thank you, Denny. It's fun to be back.
Yeah, you've been on a time or two, right?
I love coming back to be a partner of Windermere, and great to come talk to our community about watershed health and how they can get involved.
And this is something near and dear to your heart, obviously, because you are executive director and co-founder. So tell me how all of that came to be a number of years back.
Well, I wanted to start with my drive-in this morning because as I drove in and saw elk on jumbo and the Clark Fork River iced over, Rattlesnake Creek frozen in turquoise layers, and then as you cross across town, you see the sun gleaming on Lolo Peak. And I thought, we are so lucky to live here. And this is where we live. And one of the main reasons it's amazing is our watershed. So if we think about our watershed and how magnificent the snowpack in the mountains that melts down in the valleys and fills all our creeks and rivers, that's what our job is to teach our children. So kids that grow up here, especially kindergarten through 12th grade, we want our kids having this knowledge and experience that they go forward in their lives with, knowing how rivers move, how important they are to groundwater, how important they are for fishing and recreation, but also the ecology of a river that we all depend on. So that's kind of the heart of it. And I think it began when I was fishing and camping with my family, and I fell in love with rivers and creeks and thought everybody hung out at a healthy river and creek with their family and had the opportunity to throw a fly rod in or a worm on the end of a hook, in my case with my brothers, as I got older and realized a lot of people don't know about rivers and streams and don't have an experience. So then how would they know to take care of them into the future? And it's a big part of why we live in a place like Missoula. Healthy rivers are the kind of the key to our drinking water and our good quality of life here.
Well, take me by the hand on that. What exactly is a watershed, and why did it call your name a number of years ago?
Oh, that's great. So I think studying ecology in high school, I had a great high school ecology teacher. I really got into river ecology when I was in college. And then as I was teaching science, I'm kind of a former science teacher, and realized, how could we be teaching science, but our kids don't even understand how rivers and streams work in Montana? So the idea when we go into a classroom and ask our kids, where does the water in the river come from? And helping our kids and guide their thinking into beyond straight up precept like rain is the snowmelt in these mountains. And those mountains that form ranges and peaks and divides, that divide tells us which way water is going to flow. And having kids understand, which side of the divide do you live on, and where does your water flow? What's upstream from you, and where does the water flow from here? It's really important to know, especially when they get older and want to buy a house. Right?
I think the first time I ever heard the word, it goes back to when I was pretty young. The band America cut an album, and there's a track on there called Watershed Down. It was never a single. It was an album cut. And I thought, wow, that's a really good song. I wonder what the heck a watershed is, but I still like the song. Never bothered to find out what a watershed was, but I like the song. Is an organization like this common in communities or something rather unique to Missoula?
Well, that's a good question. Around the state of Montana, there are a lot of watershed groups, and those are loosely affiliated groups of people who care about how their water's treated and dealt with over the seasons. And a lot of those watershed groups want to make sure they have enough water flow in the spring, and they can make the needs be met for the irrigators, but also for fisheries and recreation. but as an education entity, I think we're unique. There's a few other education groups that feature different topics about water, but I think ours is specifically, we love to create an experience where we take the kids out to the river, put them in waders, hand them a net, teach them how to shuffle and collect bugs in a net, and then move to an area where they're going to test the water chemistry and together fill in pieces of kind of the data that shows them what is a healthy river.
Yeah, so it's a lot about youth education in terms of community awareness. Let's say, are there what kinds of concerns might you uncover? Not only concerns, but what concerns or good news that you might uncover that you would want to get the word out about. Just the good news, or hey, we were out doing our regular thing, and we noticed something that we thought maybe the community should know about.
Well, I'll tell you the top two things we notice, and that's in our summer camps with kids or in our summer monitoring, the kid pools and dog pools that might restrict flow. Those are something that we're made aware of, and we might try and do some more education about. And also, the age-old, don't leave your trash and your fishing line by the river. But, to be honest with you, our challenge is our rivers are so clean, and we're very lucky to have healthy, clean rivers. Low flows might be the biggest kind of ecology challenge for our aquatic life. But our challenge is helping people understand this is really remarkable, and come on out and measure how good this clean water is, and let's keep it that way, right? We're just so fortunate that we've come through, eons of mining history, and we now have a very rich Blue Ribbon trout stream right at our backyard. So keeping that healthy and sustained into the future is kind of what we want to focus on.
My guest is Deb Fassnacht, Executive Director and co-founder of Watershed Education Network here in Missoula. And again, it's Missoula Real Estate Today, Deb, so I better throw it out. How is Watershed Education related in some ways to today's real estate market?
Oh, that's wonderful. We live on top of the water we drink here in Missoula. And when we tell that to a high school class, they kind of look at us really funny and go, what? So thinking about that, our underground aquifer that all our homes are built on, and all this urban face that we have here in the agriculture in the fringes of Missoula, our aquifer is our drinking water, and we simply pump that good drinking water out of the ground. And as long as we can keep it clean and healthy, we're all going to have good drinking water at a reasonable rate. So it's interesting, too, that the Clark Fork River then recharges the aquifer. So a healthy Clark Fork means a healthy aquifer. Healthy aquifer means we've got great drinking water. We've got a great community we can live in. And then, you want to ask, why would people come live in Missoula? Well, I think once they get from the airport into town and see the river over any bridge they might drive over and look at this magnificent public access that we have to our water areas, this is a super desired place to live because of the water. And if you just imagine for a minute we didn't have the Bitterroot River, the Clark Fork River, or the Blackfoot River in our area, and these were just dry ditches, our town would be so different. And what we appreciate so much is an osprey flying overhead, and the fact that you've got fishermen out on the river any given day, even when it's super cold. And so I think it's the lifestyle, the quality of life, and the notion that we're part of a really special ecosystem in place.
You must be a pretty easy field trip sell when teacher says, hey, kids, you get to go wade in the water and try to get little fish and stuff with nets. That's probably not too hard to convince kids they want to go do that, right?
No, it's a pretty wondrous thing to be able to say, tomorrow we're going to meet you at the river. You dress for the weather. We'll have the waders. We'll have the chem kits. We'll take you out measuring how fast that water's moving. And then the fun of watching them slip and slide around on their waders and take these measurements. It's so fun and also amazing to see these kids experience their own backyard rivers. And you wouldn't believe it, Denny, but there's a lot of kids who have not been to the river when we're out on these field trips.
Wow.
A significant amount of our kids are still, living with technology, on TV, not out recreating like we did when we were kids. And so I've often been asked, why do we have to take kids out to the river as part of a school field trip or a summer experience? And the answer is our families and kids are not getting those experiences like they did. And that's what develops our love for public lands, our love for conservation, our love for fishing, camping, floating in a river, and even being comfortable to be down at the river with their friends, you know?
Well, what are some of your programs that involve educating people? You get these trips organized, you get them out there, but what are your priorities to accomplish? What are you going to show them? What are they going to do? What are they going to learn?
So on that school stream monitoring field trip, specifically we're looking at the aquatic macroinvertebrates, the chemistry of the water, and then how fast the water is moving and the cross-section. So we really focus in on helping these kids identify mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies, and we want that idea that that's the base food chain for our fish, our osprey, and let's get a good understanding of why it's important that we find them in a healthy river. We move them into a water chemistry station where they test pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, and put it together that fish need a good amount of oxygen. Cold water has a lot of oxygen in it, and what's a good pH for aquatic life. And then they'll make a cross-section measurement of the stream and determine how fast it's moving. And that gives us this baseline data so that when we come back another season or another year, we can say, how's the river moving or changing? And just kind of making an interesting note that rivers move and change. They flood and they get very low.
Yeah. Typically a full day trip, a couple hours. How long do you got them out there usually?
Usually 3 hours.
Okay.
If we can get them longer, we'll add components like some field journaling, some of their own, reflection, or doing some art activities, or an additional walk along the riverbank.
Yeah. So I guess one way, as far as the adults are concerned, those kids can go back and tell mom and dad everything they learned and what they found out and stuff like that. But are there programs that help home and business owners do their part, or advice that you can give them?
Well, we have another program called our Stream Team. That's a citizen and community member opportunity to go out and measure the health of streams locally. And so we invite community members, retirees, university students, stay-at-home folks to participate in our Stream Team, where we're out measuring the health of Rattlesnake Creek right now prior to a proposed dam removal. And that meets every weekend when it's weather permitting, and weather depending on who wants to go out in what kind of sub-zero conditions. But that's a great spring, summer, and fall opportunity to involve our community.
Deb Fassnacht, Executive Director and a co-founder of Watershed Education Network here in Missoula. Deb, in what ways would you like to educate people who are considering buying a home or maybe even starting a business? I don't know, but those kinds of things near watersheds in the area. What if you could have 2 minutes with them, what would you like to say to them prior to the process getting too far along?
Well, I think one of the most important things a homeowner can do, or a would-be homeowner, is to look at your backyard, and if you're near any kind of water body, consider keeping as much ground cover as you can natural. We have an issue in some areas where the riparian area gets mowed down right to the bank, and that doesn't give good absorption of rainwater and take care of the bank as well. So considering your riparian area, and the more natural and more brush-like we can have those deep-rooted plants, that's healthier for that river or stream. And the next one is just common sense. If you've got cattails growing in your backyard, you probably have high water that's going to impact your home. And so being a little bit educated and wise about what kind of plants grow in an area that's wet a lot of the time, and then thinking about how might you adapt your dwelling to accommodate for that. I think we live in a time where I don't think it should be such a surprise that rivers are going to flood. And if they do flood, who's going to be impacted, and how can we avoid something like a lot of homes or parts and pieces of homes floating down the river?
Yeah. Well, to your point on that, are you concerned with, Missoula's obviously one of those, seemingly growing and thriving areas in terms of living space and whatnot. Are you concerned with all the new construction and its effects on, say, Missoula's aquifer?
That's a good question. How do we manage our growth? And I think that's got bigger implications than our drinking water, just in terms of our waste and how are we going to make sure we can handle all that waste at the wastewater treatment center. But when I think about a city like Missoula, conscientiously, where are we building? Do we have the water to? And luckily, we have a super prolific aquifer. So we have the drinking water. It's really a matter of, do we have it in the right places? We have a healthy aquifer with lots of water rights that are now part of Missoula City and the water utility. But it's a matter of, where is that growth happening, and can we make the water available, and can we do it smart, right? Yeah, we kind of started talking about field trips a little bit a few minutes ago. I should have put this question there, but I'll put it here. Take us through an example of a recent field trip with young people that you thought was very rewarding. Well, there's a couple of them. We were out with St. Joseph's School just last fall, and we were rained out on the first time, the day we scheduled. I mean, it was torrential rain blowing sideways, and the kids were so disappointed. They're in their classroom with their rain gear on, but it just wasn't going to work. So we had them at the river later, a week later, and just throngs of kids putting on waders in the river at the Clark Fork and with their bug nets. And the scene of our Montana kids out in their water resources and discovering what lives in a healthy river, and the enthusiasm and excitement. And a few years back, we were at Rattlesnake Creek with Rattlesnake School, and as we were examining the bugs right near the creek, a realtor came by and said, we found out later she was a realtor, and said, "Wow, what are you doing here?" And we explained how the students were all engaged in learning about what makes a healthy Rattlesnake Creek. And this is so important that they'll know a healthy river in the future. And we talked a little bit about stewardship and care for our water resources. And her comment was, "You must be doing some of the most important work in Missoula, because what would
congratulations. Very
Thank
nice.
you.
Very complimentary."
She said, "What would our community be without our healthy rivers?"
Yeah.
Which brings me to SupCup, right?
Sure.
Because SupCup is one of the ways our community gets behind funding getting kids out to their rivers and streams and helping support us. We are one of the beneficiaries of the Windermere SupCup. Right. So this will be a 7th year that we're...
It's a paddleboard race.
It's a stand-up paddleboard race.
Right. And that's coming up in July.
July 21st. Mark your calendars.
Yeah. I've never asked Diane. I knew Diane Beck with Windermere was heavily involved in that. I never asked her, so how'd you get involved in this SupCup business? But you two partnered on that a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that Windermere is involved in things like this in other communities. And Missoula built their own sort of Missoula style, get the community out on the water. And stand-up paddleboards seem to be the rage. And every year we've had a team. And so the Watershed Education Network prides itself on having our most fast and enthusiastic people say, "I'll be on the team." So I'm just kind of doing an early shout out that if you're thinking about getting your team on, this is a good time to start doing your push-ups and getting in shape. And
in one regard, not all that early, because you've got a kickoff, a sponsored event kickoff coming up real soon, don't you?
Right. That's so that you commit early to getting on that stand-up paddleboard, so you're in the game. Sort of like buying that season's pass to go skiing or to the game.
Right.
All right. So I'm letting everyone know that on February 26th, that's a Tuesday at Rattlesnake Distillery, we're having our kickoff event for registration.
Okay.
And we're inviting Windermere friends and the community who thinks they're ready to commit to registering for the stand-up paddleboard race.
I'll be honest with you, I have not seen one. I haven't been overly involved other than just helping mention it on the radio and whatnot. But specifically, where is it and what is this competition like?
It's really a sweet competition because it starts at Sharon. Everybody, and then it ends at Holiday Inn Parkside.
Okay.
Kind of right along the river there, they make a finish run. So you get off your paddleboard and run up a trail and run through the finish line. And so all the paddleboards and all the paddleboard contestants are all bused down to Sharon, and then in timed sessions, they go down the river.
Yeah.
And I'm usually at the finish line. My team says it's my year to be on a paddleboard, so we'll see.
Okay.
But it's a lot of fun. It's a 3-mile section, pretty mild except for that bobble right above the new college, Missoula College.
Yeah. You always like to have more, but has participation been pretty good
Yeah,
so far?
I understand it's been pretty steady, and Windermere's goal is to grow it. They feel like the food bank and Watershed Education Network can benefit more if we get more teams out there and more community members get involved and both enjoy the river and see how much fun it is to get that close to the water, depending on if you stand on your board or not.
Yeah.
And then helping out your community at the same time.
Our guest is Deb Fassnacht, Executive Director and co-founder of Watershed Education Network here in Missoula. Deb, besides the obvious, and you touched on it a little bit, but besides the obvious, like throwing trash in the river, which everybody hates, but it happens, what are common mistakes you see that you feel, more education and awareness might benefit the community?
Well, you know, the burning issue right now is aquatic invasive species. And so we have an education program that teaches high school students about aquatic invasive species, and part of their end of their 8-day program of learning about that is they do a community outreach project. And I think one of the concerns is helping everyone with any river access, whether it's hip wading boots or their fishing lines or their paddleboard or their kayak, know that we're all got to be on watch for doing the clean, drain, dry, and making sure we're taking care of our river with this pretty immediate threat. Yeah.
So many different terms, you know, there's aquifer and there's watershed, of course, and turbidity and wetlands and groundwater. Do they all tie in with the kinds of education you're able to provide?
Well, that's the wonder of being able to talk about watershed as a goal of our education, because it encompasses literally from the tippy top of the mountains and talking about how we get our water from snowmelt every year and where that ends up in wetlands and percolates into the aquifer and into our rivers, and thinking about how our hydrology really drives the health of our community. So we've got lots of water years. That's great for agriculture. It's great for our recreationists. And when we have low water years, we all sense how dependent we are on these healthy rivers, right?
You brought this up a little while ago. I told you my questions were going to be all over the place
great.
here. You got to hang on tight to the edge of the counter there. But you were complimentary earlier in the program. As a community, how does Missoula do? How do we grade out as stewards of our waterways, do you think?
Well, that's a really great question. We might have to put that to our program people this spring, or even better, the kids. How do they think our community is taking care of our rivers? But, you know, when we look at, we have healthy blue ribbon trout streams running right through our communities. That's a pretty big measurement right there. And I think we just have to think about how our land use practices upstream and through our community making a difference. And we think about what's the water like that we send downstream. What's the quality of the water that, you know, in our section here, how well can we take care of the piece that we're responsible for?
Volunteers. Right? Volunteers a big thing, too,
Wow.
as well as educating young people. But let's go into a little detail. Tell us about your, make sure I got this right, your Stream Team Citizen Science Program. Did I get that right? Am I close?
Beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful.
All right. That means volunteers. Can you help us out? What's involved there?
So we'd love to have volunteers attend a training. So we train everybody up in all the parameters of measuring in that backyard stream. And it's something that high school students all the way up to anyone who can negotiate moving water can join us. And we've got 2 trainings coming up, March 7th, a Thursday, from 3 to 6 p.m., and March 9th, a Saturday, from 11 to 2 p.m. And they meet at our office at 802 East Front. You can go to our website, montanawatershed.org, and look under the Get Involved tab. And we'd love to have anybody who would like to help with our school field trips or our stream team get involved.
And we'll repeat that in a few minutes at the end of the program here, just in case you just weren't in a place where you could jot things down or didn't get it all. We'll go over that again in a couple minutes. But I wanted to ask you too, Deb. Everyone knows Rattlesnake Creek, a fairly fast-moving stream that comes tumbling down into the Clark Fork, and it almost has kind of an iconic image to it. What are some things that you've discovered or learned about Rattlesnake Creek that you've found fascinating?
Well, the fascinating thing to me is how many people access that creek. So when our stream team has been out there, we'll get lots of people hiking, walking, biking, walking dogs,
right,
stopping by to say, hey, what are you guys doing at the creek? What are you measuring? What's going on? And so I think the amount of use that our rivers and streams are getting, kind of hearkening back to your question about what can we do in Missoula and how well are we doing it? There are people in our community that would say we're loving our river to death. And, our parks and recreation folks that notice ledges and places where dogs might have access or people are using any bank for a trail. And that's something we noticed in the Rattlesnake, too. There's a lot of access by lots of different entities that make an unstable bank or a crumbling bank.
Yeah.
And then the high water comes and the bank washes away further and we lose a little bit of it. And then you go up just a few hundred feet, there's another one. And so I think it does stand out that although the water is really high quality, I think the impact of so many people accessing places frequently and repeatedly, we might have to manage that a little bit. Yeah.
We've established that you are, when it comes in terms of school kids, students, you are pretty much a field trip rock star. There's no doubt, right? How have you gotten the word out to the schools over the years that you're here for them as a valuable education resource? Word of mouth, or do you kind of recruit or go to the school and say, hey, we're available, just want to let you know we're here, kind of thing?
We do all of the above.
Okay.
So teachers who've used our services in the past and call us and say, we've got to have our kids out on a field trip. Let's look at your calendar. So they'll tell their other teacher friends, hey, this is a great opportunity to get your kids outdoors. And Watershed Education Network covers all the bells and whistles of the field trip. We bring out all the gear, our trained volunteers, all the safety. So that it's a pretty win-win for our teachers.
Yeah.
We send out emails. We send it into the Missoula County Public School newsletter, and we depend on opportunities like this to tell our community, if you know a teacher or a class that would like to have water education part of their lessons or their science classes, get in touch with us. Yeah.
Off the air after the show, you've probably discovered a few pretty darn good fishing holes that not a lot of people are. You going to share those with me? No, you're not. Okay. All right. You'll never be on again. No. Hey, Deb Fassnacht, Executive Director and co-founder, Watershed Education Network here in Missoula. And man, educational it is. This is great. Special thank you to some of Diane's marketing partners that help bring you Missoula Real Estate Today. Rob Fleming with Man Mortgage, Miles Link of Opportunity Bank of Montana, and Carol Blodgett with MakeItMissoula.com. And I can't believe how fast the time has gone, Deb, but one more time, folks would like to volunteer, and you've got some programs coming up, training things coming up, your location and best way to get a hold of you and all of that. We promise people we'll do that, so let's go ahead and do that.
Great. You can always go to our website, montanawatershed.org. Our phone number is 541-9287. Our email is water@montanawatershed.org, and that Montana is all spelled out.
Right.
And we'd be delighted to answer any questions about volunteering. We have a groundwater program, so if people are interested in maybe they have a more technical expertise on groundwater, the Montana Groundwater Academy serves our high school students pretty comprehensive groundwater education program. So if there's any technicians out there that are looking for a place to hone their skills, we'd love to have them as well.
And again, a couple of orientation sessions.
Oh, yeah. Our
soon,
orientation and trainings are coming up March 7th. That's a Thursday from 3 to 6 p.m. And March 9th, a Saturday from 11 to 2. And those meet at our office. It's the old Chuck Jonkel Great Bear Foundation house across from Goldsmith Bed and Breakfast at 802 East Front.
It has been great having you on, and can't wait to visit with you again on this show.
It's been a pleasure. I hope to come back again. And I just want to encourage everybody to form their Sup Cup team. Get your stand-up paddleboard out. Perfect weather to start dreaming of being on a warm, sunny day on the water, right?
Thank you for listening to Missoula Real Estate Today. We hope you found this morning's information to be helpful. If you have any suggested topics for any future Missoula Real Estate Today programs or any questions about buying or selling, contact Diane Beck with Windermere Real Estate. Email dianebeck@realtor.com or visit her website homesinmissoula.com. That's homesinmissoula.com. We'll see you next time on Missoula Real Estate Today.